Hello, Year 3. Welcome back. Lesson 8. Hope you're all well. We are moving on to something slightly different today. We are looking at and recognising some fractions. We're only focusing today on two. We're focusing on a half and a quarter. So they're the two we're going to focus on today. Now, just going over a little bit of work on fractions, which I imagine you have heard before, but just so we're 100% clear. A fraction or fractions are equal parts of a whole. So you can see this first example here. Okay. I've split my rectangle into two equal pieces and I've shaded one of them. Okay. And you can see by, let me change the colour. By here, I've written it as a half. Okay. And what I've said is the number above the line, above our fraction line, tells me how many I have. Usually it's how many I've shaded. So you can see here, if I go over the blue with my red, how many have I shaded? I've shaded one of the fractions. And then the number below the line tells me how many pieces there are in total. So I've got my shaded fraction and I've got my unshaded fraction. So altogether I've got a half. You can see underneath then here, this one here. Okay, this time my rectangle is split into four equal pieces. So that goes below the line, and that tells me how many pieces I've got all together. That's the pieces that are shaded and that are unshaded as well. And then how many pieces are shaded, how many fractions goes on the top. So there are four pieces all together, four fractions, and one of them is shaded. And remember, this fraction is 1/4. So just to remind you, with any fraction, I'll put one here on the right-hand side. Okay, the bottom number tells me how many fractions I've got all together in total. And then the top number tells me how many I've eaten or how many I've shaded. Okay, so that there would be 3/4. All right, we're going to move on to this tomorrow. But if I go for this example here, so now we're looking at a fraction of an amount. So half of 60. So if I write it in words, half of 60. Now, most of you probably know half of 60 straight away, but there's three different ways of working it out, okay? There's partitioning, which is what we're going to focus on today, where I partition my tens and my units. What's half of 60, I say, is 30. What's half of 0? Well, it's 0. Okay, and I add those together. So half of 60 is 30. The other way, which is second way, is to ask yourself how many of the bottom number, which in our example is 2, goes into the amount, which is 60. So how many 2's go into 60? Well, if I count up, it's 32's. That's a bit more complicated. And then my last way, which is 3, is I can turn it into a division. When I'm halving, I'm dividing by 2. So if I know my bus stop method, how many 2's go into 6? It's 3. How many 2's go into nothing? Nothing. Okay, but we're going to focus on this partitioning method today. So you can see here, I've given one more example, half of 64. So again, underneath I've partitioned into tens and units. What's half of 60? It's 30. What's half of 4? It's 2. And if I add those together, I get 32. Okay, so half of 64 is 32. So you can see here, first ones we're doing is halves. They're all halves, okay? So partition the number into its tens and its units, and then whatever the half of the tens is and half of the units is, add them together. So pause now and press play when you're ready to go through the answers. Okay, great. So hopefully you found those quite easy, because we're going to be moving on to more complicated ones tomorrow. Okay, so if I run through these answers nice and quickly now, half of 84 is 42. Half of 52, well, half of 50 is 25, and half of 2 is 1. Add those together, I get 26. Easy one there, 30. Half of 56 would be 28. Half of 78 would be 39. Half of 94, 47. And then the last one, half of 158. Well, this time I'm having to partition into hundreds, tens, and units. So if I halve all of those, I get those numbers there. And if I add those up, I get 79. Hopefully you got all those right. And like I said, well done for partitioning. And tomorrow we're going to do something a little bit trickier.